Yo, I got really excited this week because Cloudflare announced that they launched a CMS. And I got excited because I've for a long time wondered what would it look like to have a CMS running on Cloudflare. I've taken a quick look. Probably should have recorded my first take opinions, but I figured I'd dust off the YouTube channel, install Emdash, the new CMS from Cloudflare, and walk you through what I think about it as somebody who's worked with and for CMSs for quite a number of years. I should give you some context first. I'll put chapter markers in this so you can just skip ahead to the reactions if you like. But I wanted to explain what do I think when I think CMSs. So probably best to draw this out. So what does WordPress mean to me and why was it so important for me? Well, WordPress is made of a few things, right? So you have your code, and this is what you are responsible for. That's made of two different parts. There's sort of the back-end WordPress admin, which you have to maintain. Everything about WordPress, you maintain, you own the code, and that's kind of the beauty and the tragedy of it. You own the WordPress admin. That's code that you have to maintain, you have to push to production in a typical scenario. And then there's also your front end, which is also rendered out from WordPress, typically in a what do we even used to call that? Like a monolithic structure. You would have your WordPress front end rendered by WordPress itself. Now, of course, we got headless WordPress. I could never understand the point of headless WordPress. It felt like sort of dancing with your cousin in that why would you have a headless front end and still be tied to WordPress? Why would you still have to buy into the WordPress ecosystem if those WordPress plugins weren't able to actually help you with your front end? So there is headless front ends. I never saw the value in them. My traditional experience with WordPress before I left using WordPress was like this. Now, you were also responsible for maintaining the database. And so this is something that would sort of live with your installation and live in production, and you would be in charge of backing it up, making sure that it was working. And the other hassle I always found with WordPress was that you had to handle the assets. And this is the experience of working with WordPress. And it's great because it does so much, and it's annoying because it breaks in ways you don't expect and it leaves you with a lot of the admin. And the other problem is that like this is just on your machine. Typically, if you're developing locally, I mean, I started with WordPress very early on in my web development career, and I didn't know how to set up a local sort of MAMP stack on my computer for the longest time, and so I was just FTPing everything into production and working on it there, literally. Terrible to think about now. So you also were responsible for having to duplicate this into production or staging environments, and your maintenance of these two things was, again, the beauty and the tragedy of working with WordPress. And this is what WordPress meant to me. So I then came across some more advanced tools over the years that would help alleviate some of the problems with version control. You know, FTPing this from local into production is not a good means of working. And so I found a thing called Roots, and they had this Trellis deployment framework. And they had a way of making sure that at least this bottom part, just the code section of it here, could be deployed and the servers could be provisioned and set up. And so that was a great way to maintain that. But the database and the assets were still your issue, although I found a plugin which was really helpful for that called well, let's write it out here. So WPDB Admin Pro. No, WPDB Migrate Pro. That's what I used to use to help migrate database and assets. Let's sort of like move this around. So this would be able to keep your database and assets in sync, or like, well, manually between two different environments. So instead of being entirely responsible for these things always working the same, you could at least transfer them across, and that was nice to have that automated as well. So there's developer tooling that come along to make some of these things easier, but again, a lot of the responsibility is on you. Okay, so let's look at WordPress, and all of this works and it is functionality rich, but as you continue to maintain these projects, you learn of the limitations. WordPress comes out of the box with two major post types, that's posts and pages, and you end up in a situation where, well, that's not enough because there are many more entities in life than posts and pages, particularly for what you're going to use WordPress for. And the way to maintain those things typically is inside of a database. So what you can do is install a plugin for custom post types, and that's what I think I used to use was like custom post types something. Maybe that was the name of the plugin. So your custom post types allowed you to say, well, there's products and there's staff and there's offices and this sort of thing as well. But a custom post type, even by default, only has a few fields within it. And so you would have the advanced custom fields plugin. Definitely was like I think that was the plugin that made WordPress make sense to me. It's like, okay, actually, I can turn WordPress into what I need it to be. I can create any entity type and I can give it any meta field I like, so that then instead of having to say, well, an office is a page and a person is a page and a location is a page and a product is a page, we can say, well, this post type represents an office and an office has these specific fields. And so that is great, and that extends the platform. But storing that in the database is really gnarly because they can get out of sync if you don't migrate those post types up, or if you don't migrate your front end up first to support those post types. So you get cut over there, and it's not a pleasant experience. But fortunately, there are, packages, probably more so than plugins, that allow you to monitor these things as code. And so instead of doing this in the database, I would actually do this in the code, and it's sort of part of that WordPress backend or WordPress admin. I would make sure that I would have something that hooked into that functions.php file, I think. So I could at least declare that these post types and these field types are code, and so that's going to be true, wherever my backend admin is, and that's going to be true wherever my front end is. So my front end and my admin are always in sync, and these representations of my schema types, essentially, and the fields within them, they're going to be true in the admin and the front end at the same time, and the database is just going to have to respect whatever the state of this code is at that point in time. So the code represents what's actually possible or visible to write into or extract from the database. And so that's incredibly important to me. So these are the things that are important to me, and these are the reasons why eventually, when frustrated with Sanity and frustrated with WordPress, I came and found Sanity. So Sanity is where I used to work for almost 5 years after doing about 10 years of WordPress development. I used Sanity for about 2 years first, and then joined the team there many, many years ago now. But what Sanity sort of provided is the most frustrating part to me in all of this was having to maintain some pretty complex WordPress admin code. And the maintenance of the database and the assets is the most problematic part to me, which I know is ironic because now I work for a database company, but I really hated having to maintain the database in that day and age. So what Sanity allows you to do then? So it says, well, your code represents the Sanity Studio configuration. So Sanity Studio is the WordPress admin equivalent. And so you are really just configuring that. You're not sort of building it, and you don't have to hack it into pieces because it exposes so many hooks to determine what the admin interface is going to look like. And then your front end is only ever going to be a headless front end. There is no sort of monolithic renderer from the back-end content. And that's because Sanity, instead of this is all of you and your concerns, Sanity draws the line and says, let's draw a line. So Sanity draws a line and says, well, actually, we are going to host the database, which they call a data set, for for both text and assets. So all of your text data lives as JSON, and all of your assets also live in this data set as well. They're probably not in that same physical location, but you sort of treat them as a single entity. Here's one entity that contains all of this stuff and will host that, and also will provide the CDN and will provide the query language. And so Sanity sort of extracted away all of the worst parts of WordPress, and most preferably where we had to set up custom post types and advanced custom fields to get the schema types and the fields within them that I wanted. Sanity Studio is just that. It is a blank slate. It doesn't have opinions on any data type. It knows through structured content principles that you will want specific entities. And so this text, this data set and assets, actually, this is up in the cloud. So you're not working with a local database, and it runs so quickly, it's never really an issue. And you then deploy into production with sort of like a more modern thing, like a Git-backed deployments with Vercel, for example. So you are deploying this. The Sanity Studio, you're probably also actually deploying up into the cloud nowadays as well, because there's benefits to that too. So you're deploying the Studio to their hosting, but the headless front end, you are just in charge of sending that. And of course, we're querying data set and assets and text data down into production. So this works really well. and was the way that I have always wanted to work with content ever since I found it. It's like, finally, they launched exactly what I wanted. And you got many other benefits as well, like multiplayer editing and all sorts of things. It's not my job to sell you on Sanity any longer. It was for quite a while, but it's not anymore. Just to say, this is what I used to work with, and I really loved that for a long time until I found this, and I thought that was much better. But the reason I wanted to make this video, and the reason I got very excited about what I saw from Cloudflare, is that even while I was at Sanity, in the back of my mind, I did wonder for the longest time, what would it look like to build a new CMS from scratch like this, but using Cloudflare technology? Because Cloudflare had all of the underlying technologies required. They've got database, they've got asset storage, they are the CDN. I mean, that's kind of what they're mostly known for, certainly to me. They've got all of these things. If they just had an opinionated front end, which with the Astro acquisition, now they do, and if they had a very opinionated back end, it would be easy for them to tie all of those things together and produce a content management system. So did they do it? Let's have a look. I mean, it's very much in... it's in early preview, so I don't want to be like too hard on it, but this was really cool to read through to find out what the intention of this was. But it was pretty curious that the launch post of this was very strongly worded around recreating or solving issues with plugins. My issue with WordPress was never really with plugins. Once you've got a really good starter going, and once you've got the plugins that you need, I personally haven't needed to go and install a million more plugins. Now, I know a lot of sort of more beginner users probably do need to do that, but that's not what I've ever really needed to work with. Also, I know this number always gets thrown around, and I have always been suspicious of it. Do you feel like 40% of the websites that you visit run on WordPress? Or is it just that WordPress is the easiest out-of-the-box solution to produce spam websites and rubbish that filters throughout the internet, particularly in the slop era? That I will leave for you to decide. So this is what it looks like. It's very clearly going for just the WordPress look. But yeah, the emphasis on solving plugin architecture, it's very technically cool. And that's the vibe that I've got from this. And like I just said, I was very excited about the idea of a Cloudflare CMS because they have all the cool tech. My initial read on this is that, yeah, they've put all the cool tech into play. I'm not sure it's actually resulted in a really great experience for now, or perhaps it's even solving the right problem. There's also this sort of payment gateway thing. But yeah, a lot of technical expertise. So anyway, enough chat. Let's go and try this out. So let's make a new project. I think it was it npm create Emdash at latest. Let's say this one's going to be the Simeon blog. I'm going to deploy this to Cloudflare. Cool, you can deploy it anywhere, but I'm on the Cloudflare. I want opinions from Cloudflare, so I want their opinionated starter. Blog, we're going to use that template. Nice to have templates there, so I get an immediate setup there. What package manager? We're going to use pnpm. We're going to install. Let's see that work. And so hopefully I get a better experience than before. Let's see me in blog, because what I had earlier was the typical sort of experience where there's all sorts of warnings and errors and things going on. Yep, that's the typical sort of npm experience. But it did load. Let's go and have a look. So this local 4321, the Astro port, which is always very clever. And we're presented with this. I went looking for instructions. Not too deeply. I don't know if there's documentation yet beyond the blog post, but this is what I mean. If we go and have a look at the blog post here, it says that it's on GitHub, right? So perhaps I was expecting to see in the README, what to do once I've set this up. Yeah, yes, there's templates. Why use it? WordPress that's great. WordPress was built for a different era. Sandbox plugins, it's not my problem. Number 2. Maybe that's just me. I do like structured content over HTML. Very cool. I was going to touch on this later, but might as well touch on it now. Portable text, a standard that was started at Sanity, is now developed by a fantastic developer there, primarily Christian, who's been working on that for a number of years now, and it's just awesome. Very good format for working with block content. So that's really nice to see that there has been a structured content approach to the rich text and block content. That's very cool. My issue, though, more deeply comes later on when it looks like there's no really support for custom post types. And so portable text is cool to see, built for agents, but I don't sort of see beyond technical implementation details like what to do or what the expectation is here. Again, maybe it's because it's only early preview, but like if I have a customer and I'm building a website for them in 2026, I don't know if that's actually a thing that people do anymore, but say somebody asked me to build them a website and say I wanted to use the CMS, where the admin, what the admin route is, what I should do next, how I should solve for structured content, how I should set up my backend. Those are the things I'd be looking for. So at the moment, I'm a little concerned that it's way too much leveraged on look at how technically impressive this is and not look what I can do. Anyway, I clicked create a post and that took me into the admin route. Fantastic, which took a little while. Now, I had to set this up before. This is the Simeon blog. I'm not going to give it a tagline. I do like having sample content there from the very beginning. That's great. Let's put my email in, my name, yes. The passkey thing is kind of clever. Here, massive glaring issue. This is my least favorite thing in front end. Can we please stop doing this? If you sent a text, put text wrap balance on it. I just can't take this anymore. Like if Tumblr was still popular, I'd try and start a Tumblr blog about this. Look at how much better this is going to look. If you sent a text, put text wrap balance, even pretty. No, not pretty. Balance. Balance is the one. Text center should always come with text wrap balance. I have asked Adam Wathan if he would add that to Tailwind by default. He could solve this for all of us. Now, when I click create passkey, worryingly, it shows me a bunch of like existing customer stuff. I don't know why that is. I'm using 1Password here. Let's say it's actually going to be a new item. So I don't know how passkeys work when we save them to localhost. Again, if this is trying to replace WordPress, anticipate that the sort of WordPress developer you're targeting runs and operates 50 to 100 WordPress websites. I hope this passkey isn't bound to just this one installation. And actually, I suppose I'll learn that in a moment because I have already set up one. Yeah, there we go. This is really problematic. I'm going to run multiple sites on localhost. I need these passkeys to work. Now, I'm pretty sure it was the green one I just created. No, was it the pink one? There we go. Cool idea to build in passkeys. Would love to imagine the use case of the agency that works on 50 to 100 WordPress installs. The UI is this weird uncanny valley where it's very clearly WordPress-like, but it's I don't love it. But it could do with refinement. Obviously, again, we're all in preview. But here's where I just got this huge issue. You know, again, if all this Cloudflare technology was being implemented to build an awesome CMS, that's very cool. But the app itself could have taken more swings to become really great, or really great in a way that it would promote structured content. Sorry to clarify. That's specifically what I'm looking for. So very cool that we've duplicated pages and posts. However, pages and posts aren't the only type of content. And so then sort of upset with this, I'm like, okay, so how do I create a custom post type? Because I'm going to need more than a blog. I found down here in the admin section, content types. And so I can create new content types. And now I'm deeply concerned that I'm going to be writing these to the database. And if I am, that's really not going to work. To the point where I wish that this wasn't an option. This should be like infrastructure as code. I don't want ClickOps content types. I want to promote structured content. So in summary, I understand why pages and posts are the default types. I wish that custom post type support was not just in the database, because then sort of alternatively, I went looking in the documentation or in the README rather to find like, well, can I actually, let's go and explore the code base and stop talking here. There seems to be no configuration options for the post types within the code itself. So like if we go to the Astro config, we can see here, I think this is where Emdash is configured, and we can see the database and the storage. That's very cool. Little concern that database, I think it supports many, many databases. I mean, that's cool because I now work for a database provider, but I don't know how many various issues that's going to create. I've seen Payload CMS try to support multiple different database providers, and then a lot of support ticket generation out of the fact that there are so many different types of databases it supplies. I haven't used Payload CMS. I've just seen that volume of support tickets. But yeah, there's nothing here about how do I set up post types? How do I set up fields? How do I set up my schema and the relationships one to another? That's what I'd be expecting to see in code, because that's what I'd like to deploy along with my admin interface. So maybe that's coming, maybe. But for now, it's a concern to me that this is even possible at all to write post types to our database. So the other things I'd want to test, like I said, Sanity had to create a lot of technology in order just to work before the technology existed. But now that technology is democratized. So things like multiplayer and real time, that has always been table stakes for Sanity Studio. I figured because Cloudflare has that same technology, it would be table stakes here as well. So I can edit this page and I should see it saves after a second. So it's debounced, but it works. That's cool. What I wanted to see though was like if I split these together, what I'm expecting is, well, for one, it's nice. It's better than WordPress in that I'm not getting locked out of this page, first of all, because it doesn't say somebody else is editing this. But I was expecting to be able to, make a new title and see that change in both tabs. Instead, I see the reverse happen. The page resets. If there's one thing a content management system can't do, it's lose content. The second a user uses a platform like this and loses work that they've been working on, trust is broken and might never come back. So again, I know it's in preview and it's early, but like this is table stakes. I would find it very difficult to ever entertain trying to use this if this level of bug is here. One, I would want to see multiplayer real time in editing, just out of the box. But then the possibility of losing data, that's the alarm bells. Seeing portable text here is really nice. I like seeing this here. I like sort of the affordances that we built on top of this editor. That's really cool. And then, we've just got sort of those built-in post types from what we'd expect with WordPress. So I'm seeing my draft changes. That's nice at least. But if we think about this as well, so I'm just going to drop that alongside there. So what I'd also like to see is live preview on my front end. Unfortunately, I don't seem to get that either. I can make a change here. I'm still losing my work. If I go and change that there, so that has now been saved. Maybe it's a client-side state management issue. Either way. If I go and refresh on the right-hand side, so I do get previewing of draft changes. That's great. But what I'm not getting is a live preview. Something Sanity does have. Yes, it takes a little setup, but something that was possible. We do have like this idea of steganography encoding so that I can click any field within a page and it traces back to the origin of where that content come from. That's an awesome thing that it's nice to see come across. That was, again, an open standard developed at Sanity there and is now seemingly available within Emdash, which is nice. So I don't need to go through every section here, but I just wanted to share my first thoughts after having a look at it very briefly. I do like that the form plugin is the one installed by default because forms are kind of like notoriously difficult, but also forms are a content type. Submissions are a content type. I'd want to see these defined in code. Perhaps there is a way then if a plugin can define content types. But I guess in summary, I love the idea of Cloudflare getting into CMS. I would love them to have used this opportunity to elevate the conversation of structured content and really demonstrate the power of that instead of just saying, hey, that CMS from like 20 odd years ago, let's make that, but on the Cloudflare technology. And I hope that doesn't sound like I'm underselling it too much or being too flippant about it. But there's a real opportunity to recreate what's great about WordPress and integrate what's great about modern headless CMSs, but it still sort of feels a few steps removed back from that. Maybe it'll change. Maybe the course of that will change. Maybe they can make great improvements in that direction. That's certainly what I would like to see from a content management system, but it's a very cool start. I was not expecting Cloudflare to get into content. I just was always excited by the idea because I knew they had all the tools to put it together. So I'll be interested to see where this project goes. And that's my thoughts from a CMS industry veteran.